Hi there, and welcome back to Gaze Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman, and before we get to the theme song and the main portion of the episode, I wanted to acknowledge that this is the first episode to air following the election, and we're living in a time where it's good to be reminded that books, and this podcast in particular, are inherently political. As a show that proudly centers queer voices, Gaze Reading has always been a space for amplifying LGBTQIA+ and ally authors and sharing stories from the margins. As a cisgender white man, I recognize the privilege that I hold, and my goal as host is to use that privilege responsibly, to elevate marginalized voices and to create a safe space that will always feel safe, supportive, and empowering for everyone who joins us. This podcast will continue to be a platform for authentic stories and a place where we can celebrate, uplift, and fight for the rights of all. So before we dive into today's episode, I want to highlight the issue of book banning, which threatens the very foundation of free expression and access to diverse stories. If you're looking for ways to support, I encourage you to check out resources from organizations like the American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom, PEN America, and local advocacy groups working to combat censorship in schools and libraries. Our guest gay reader from last week, Brian Derrick, his organization Oath, can also point you in the right direction, focusing on different book bans around the country. And you can learn more at oath.vote. And I also highly recommend taking a listen to his portion of last week's episode. He talks a little bit about ways to move forward following the election, regardless of what the outcome might have been. The resources can help us all continue to stand against book bans and ensure that everyone has the right to read and discover freely. And how can you support Gaze Reading? As an independent podcast, the best way to support is by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing us with your friends. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at Gaze Reading, and you can like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you can help with our numbers, which allows other people to find the podcast more easily. On today's episode, we have the debut memoirist Oliver Radclyffe talking to us about his memoir, Frighten the Horses, and today's guest gay reader is the tremendous Roxane Gay. Nothing like coming back the week after the election, hearing from a trans man and a queer Black woman. Both of their bios can be found in the show notes. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your continued support. And now, on to the jaunty theme song.
Gaze Reading, where the greats drop by. Trendy authors tell us all the who, what, and why. Anyone can listen, 'cause we're spoiler-free. Gaze Reading, from Pulitzer stars to book club picks, where the curious minds can get their fix. So you say you're not gay, well that's okay. There's something for everyone. Gaze Reading.
We're here to talk about your book, Frighten the Horses, your new memoir. But before we get into that, because it's heavy, is that a word?
Like,
heavy? Maybe it's not the right word.
It's like heavy and light in equal doses.
But it is serious.
It is serious,
perhaps.
yes.
Yes. There's something I wanted to talk to you about
Go
first.
on.
Some point in the book, you talk about a debate at a dinner party about whether or not narwhals are real.
Yeah.
Oliver, I had to Google.
Yeah, that does
I
not
literally
look like a real thing, right?
No, but also from like the claymation Frosty the Snowman thing, I've known of narwhals, but I never.
But you always see them in cartoon form, and they look like a cartoon because nobody has a long spiky nose like that. That can't be. It's like a unicorn. That's got to be a made-up
It's like
thing.
a whale. It's like a dolphin.
It's like
unicorn.
a dolphin unicorn, so it can't possibly be real.
Or like a beluga unicorn.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, I didn't know. And sure enough, they are. They're real.
I'm really glad that I brought that to the world. If that's my one contribution, the visibility of narwhals, then I think I've done my part.
Little did you know, this was a narwhal visibility.
It is a narwhal. I'm going to rebrand it, actually.
Right.
I'm going to start.
They're not just mystical creatures.
Yeah.
They're real.
Exactly. Yeah. We got to stay. It's not an ideology.
Wait, at the dinner party, where did you fall? Do you remember?
Oh, no, I was trying to explain it to my children.
Oh.
I can't remember. I think I didn't think they were real. And of course, my children did because they
Oh.
believed in everything. Because to
Yeah,
my children,
yeah.
unicorns are
You're like,
real,
"Yeah,
fairies are
kid.
real,
Okay."
are real. So therefore, a narwhal must
Yeah,
be real. And I'm like, no, a narwhal's not real. So I think I probably did exactly what you did and Googled it and
yeah.
then was enlightened and delighted.
I have so many people that I know who are listening to this right now rolling their eyes at me being like, "You're
Yeah,
ridiculous. Of
but
course they're
that's
real."
okay. It's an education. And we have to
I
be
know.
very patient with people who don't understand because everybody needs to get educated in their own time, right? That was my process.
So usually I would ask people for an elevator pitch of their book, but instead, I
Okay.
think we could talk about your cover and the
Okay.
title
Yes.
because I feel like that those
Sums
things
it.
sort of becomes the elevator pitch.
Yeah.
So can you share the quote that Frighten the Horses comes from?
Okay, so it comes from a British actress called Mrs. Patrick Campbell back in the 1950s when homosexuality was still illegal in Britain. And she was interviewed by, I think, the London Times, don't quote me on that, about, about the fact that there were a couple of gay people in the chorus of the play that she was in. And
Mm,
she was asked her opinion on this. And she said, darling, I don't care what they do in private as long as they don't do it in the streets and frighten the horses. And it became this very famous quote in England to advocate for just keeping it all behind closed doors. And if you're going to do these indecent things, just don't talk about it. Zero visibility, closeted status, all the rest of it. And that's how I was brought up. I was brought up in that kind of society where everything that's not normal gets kept behind closed doors. And so I turned it into a proposal that we all go out into the streets and frighten the horses.
for anyone who doesn't have an imagination
Uh-huh.
or isn't very good at context clues,
Uh-huh.
what would happen if you did frighten the horses?
I think what would happen and what I thought would happen are two different things.
I guess quite literally, if there are horses
Oh, I
outside and
see.
one were to, and
And
one
what
were
to
to
frighten the
frighten
horses? Oh,
them,
they would rear, and the carriage that somebody was in would get thrown, and then would get trampled to death, and there would be chaos and mayhem and carnage and the end of world order and societal
right,
collapse, basically.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So please don't do
So
that.
don't
Be
do that.
you,
Don't do that.
but don't do
No,
that.
be you, but don't be you anywhere in public. So very quietly, please.
Right.
And that was a response of one of my father's friends, in fact, probably more than one, but I was only told about the one, when I finally came out, was like, why, and I'm using my previous pronouns because I'd just come out as a lesbian, why does she have to tell everybody? If she wants to do this, why can't she just keep it behind closed doors? And of course, that was what my ex-husband, who I was married to at the time, was trying to get me to do.
So that's the title,
So that's the
Frighten the
title.
Horses. The cover
Yeah.
is a fantastic drawing of a person who we cannot tell their identity
Mm-hmm.
because they're covered in black motorcycle gear with a helmet on, riding a motorcycle out of a little shed.
Uh-huh.
And the one perhaps gender identifying item is a fallen heel,
And
high
a
heel.
Louboutin shoe with the red sole to identify
With
it.
the red soul,
Yeah.
huh? And the visual with the title, because this is an audio medium / if you're watching on YouTube, you
Mhm.
could see it. The visual with the title looks as though there's this person hopping on the motorcycle to go off and frighten the
Yeah.
horses because they say, screw that, I'm going to go do it anyway.
Yeah.
And they've left their shoe behind, almost Cinderella-esque.
Ex-
What does the cover mean to you? And I think, again, that will sum up what the book really does.
The cover has its own story because I have 4 children. So when my children were little, we used to read Oliver Jeffers' books. Oliver Jeffers is an illustrator and a writer. He's Irish. We grew up on his books. My house was like covered in them when we were younger. And I always had this dream that if I actually managed to finish this memoir and get it published, that he would design the cover for me. And when I mentioned it to Roxane Gay, my editor, she contacted Oliver because she knew him. I didn't know that at the time. And asked him if he would do it. And Oliver said, no, I'm too busy with my own work. I don't do covers for other people. And Roxane put a little gentle pressure on him and just said, look, just read the book. then make a decision. And Oliver wrote to me afterwards and said that he pulled the book out of his bag on an overseas flight, like it was leftover homework that he didn't want to get to. And he said by the end of the flight, he'd finished it, and he was, and then he just did the design and sent it to Roxane without even, and it just encapsulated, I nearly cried when I saw it, because it just encapsulates the whole story of this really weird, winding, messed up journey that I went through to find my identity, which involves being a motorcyclist when I was in my 20s, and then getting married and masquerading as this sort of heterosexual housewife. And we moved from upper class England to the Connecticut suburbs, and that's what the little hut is. It's like one of those Connecticut barns that you see peppered across the Connecticut countryside. So it has all these little bits from different parts of my story in this one cover, and the horse's hoofs coming out of the barn underneath the motorcycle. He just couldn't have designed a more perfect cover.
It really tells a beautiful story, the cover itself. And thank you for sharing that. I didn't know.
Wow, you've got some motorcycle sounds. That is leaf blowing.
That is leaf blowing.
That is leaf blowing. They've got some
what is going
wild leaf blowers going out there. It's the soundtrack. They're trying to create the motorcycle soundtrack to the story that we're talking about.
While we have the ambient sound, are you still a rider?
No, I'm not, and I wish I was. I mean, I am. I was
in your heart and soul.
I was trans before I came out as trans, so I will always be a motorcyclist, even when I don't have a motorcycle.
That's fair.
At the moment, practicalities override my desire to just have two wheels and disappear, because I do still have 3 of my 4 children at home, and I need to not break a leg at the moment. So yeah, that's going to wait 3 more years until the last of my kids leave home, and then I'm going to buy myself probably.
And that's when not your next, but then there will be another book.
Then there will be another book,
about that motorcycle journey.
Almost certainly, yes. At least there is going to be.
You should do like a cross-country ride.
I know, cross-country trans ride on a motorbike. How good would that be?
Yes. Yeah. A transcontinental ride.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Okay, that's my next book. We're done.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
So your story, this comes up in the book, but I would say it also sums up what the book is about. You talk about being in England a faithful daughter, in Connecticut an emerging lesbian, and in New York a man. The book, the subtitle could be The Ultimate Guide to Code Switching and how to get to where you need to be.
Yes, I guess so. And disguise, the art of disguise, the subtle art of disguise, and not being who you are, and trying to figure out how to be that person against the odds.
Absolutely. And I think so much of...
There they come again.
The bike not bike is back. It feels very butch.
It does.
For me.
Yeah, no, it's
a little too butch.
I know, I feel it's good though. It's great, giving a raw edge to this conversation.
It really
putting some
is.
heft in there.
If I'm going to be in this like dainty room with a pink duvet.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I might as well have the noise.
The butch noise coming in from the back.
Speaking of butch noises.
This is just bring that. There's the one identity I basically never had, bizarrely.
Is butch?
Yeah, I bypassed butch. I went straight from femme to non-binary to trans without really going through a butch phase. By the time I started transitioning, non-binary was a thing.
So perfect.
Yeah. So there's the little bit of butch that we've been missing.
We'll go wield a hammer.
Yeah. Oh, I did once briefly have the kind of the car keys on the leather thing that clipped to my...
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That was my butch
That was your
phase.
Butch afternoon.
That was my butch. That lasted a couple of months. So yeah, I did do butch for a couple of months.
Okay.
I got it in there.
Yeah, you claim that.
I snuck it. Yeah.
But the stupid leaf blower is getting me all over the place. So, again, before we get too heavy, because there's still so much to talk about, you always wanted to play Henry Higgins. Who do we need to call?
Yeah, I know. What? To actually play him?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's your time.
It's my time to play Henry Higgins? Oh, I don't know if I could now. Although...
What are you talking about?
If you queered up Henry Higgins, if you queered up that whole play... Did you know that... So
it's all queer.
The quote, the Mrs. Patrick Campbell quote, that it was the Pygmalion that she was in when they asked her that question.
Oh, no
Yeah,
way.
so it all comes round in a full circle.
How
but
funny.
Yeah, no.
That's such a fun little Easter egg.
Yeah, I totally... And I think I need to be Henry Higgins for Halloween. Just so that I can get the wingtip rose. I've got the wingtip rose now, so...
You're still in Connecticut? There has to be a community theater.
Oh, God.
That will put on...
Yes, can you imagine? Jesus. Me
Yes,
doing
I can.
queering up the community theatre in Connecticut. It would be amazing.
Oliver,
Do you think we should do
Henry
this?
Higgins is like so foppish as
He
it is.
really is. He's a dandy.
Yes.
He's so gay. He could never sleep with
Yes.
Eliza. He just wants to have that slightly homoerotic sort of BDSM relationship with her.
He's like a control freak, a dandy control
He's like
freak.
a dandy control freak, and she's the diva that he needs to have in his life in order to actualize his feminine side.
Yes.
It could be really fun.
I'm manifesting.
All right,
this for
let's
you.
do this. Let's do this.
Fly.
I will get my friends around together and we'll get it done. The West End calls, darling.
I'm like not 100% kidding. Like this needs to happen on your journey.
A 5'3" Henry Higgins. I love it.
I don't see the problem.
No, neither do
Listen,
I. You're absolutely right.
throughout the book, you talk about reading a lot. One of the things you expressly talk about is how you even read a book to impress a woman once.
Mhm.
Was that commonplace for you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, very much. Everything I did was to impress women. I mean, that was like my whole life. I've stopped doing it now. But yeah, it was because I didn't have any other way fulfilling this need that I had inside me for that kind of relationship. Because I was so closeted. I wasn't really even aware that's what those feelings were.
So it could be as simple as someone said, "Oh, I loved this book," and you're saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm going to read that book because you loved it, and I want to read it."
Yeah,
to
the
love
same
it.
girl was into the Smiths, and I swear to God, I know every single lyric of every single Smith song that was ever recorded. And now I love the Smiths. It got me some good culture. But yeah, that was my way in because I had no other way in. So it was like a cultural, if I could connect with them culturally. The
Smiths is a great example. Are there other things like that where you're like, oh, I would have never discovered blank, whether it's this book or this artist or whatever, if you were not lusting after some gorgeous...
Francis Bacon. I fell in love with Francis Bacon because somebody I was in love with. We met him in a pub in England, and I can't remember the context, but we went into this pub, and I think she knew somebody, and he was sitting in the corner of the pub holding court surrounded by his minions. And I had no idea. I was young. I had no idea who Francis Bacon was. So I was like, oh, yes, I know who he is. That's amazing. And then afterwards, I quickly went home and looked him up and then bought lots of Francis Bacon books. Yeah, that was part of what I did.
I love that. Speaking of books, you rattle off so many queer books or queer authors who you sought out as you were on your journey. How does it feel to be one of those now? You are a queer author that when someone's on their journey, they're going to seek out.
I don't have the words for it. I really don't have the words for it. I went to a friend of mine put together when I just about 6 months after I came out of the closet as a lesbian. So this was back in 2012 or something. A friend of mine in England who worked for a gallery who represented Thomas Heatherwick brought him over to do an exhibition here in New York. And I went to the show and to the opening night, and she introduced me to a bunch of friends of hers, and one was a writer and one was an artist and one was a musician, and they were all talking, and then they turned to me and said, what brought you to New York because of the accent? And I just stood there and I felt myself shrivel because I didn't want to say, oh, my husband, and then admit that I was like a heterosexual married housewife with no job. And I wanted to say, I'm queer and I'm a writer, and I couldn't because I was still closeted and I hadn't got anything published at that stage. And I remember leaving that party just feeling so small and so invisible and so nothing, and thinking, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to come out. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be able to say who I am. I'm going to write. I'm going to get published. And now here I am 12 years later, and I've done it. It only took 12 years, but I got there.
12 years, and also you, for all intents and purposes, have lived a full life.
Yeah, I think I've lived several lives, actually.
Yeah, just rattling off the few examples of even the places that you've lived.
Yeah.
You lived a different life in all those places.
Yeah, when I look back, it is extraordinary to see how many identities I have lived through or taken on trying to find the person that I ended up being.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think something that the book does so beautifully is, rather than seeing it as a coming out, it is really about a coming in. And I think because as a reader, or at least this reader, I won't speak for everyone, I don't want to make any assumptions that people are reading about the author before they read a book, but you know where the book is going to end because I know you're a trans man.
Exactly. There's no surprise. There's no surprises here.
No. And so you're reading it and you're watching you strip away layers to find you inside,
Yeah.
right? You're not changing, you're not
Yeah.
quote unquote transitioning.
Yeah.
Something in the book you talk about how coming out as a lesbian was quote unquote as simple as changing your partner, whereas coming out as trans is about changing yourself. I would argue as a reader, you didn't change.
No.
It was you
And
uncovered.
that's why I've written quite a lot recently about questioning the language that we use around transition and trying to find new language that more accurately describes the experience. And I started talking about alignment. We're aligning ourselves. But I read recently that a trans writer called Xander Keeg, I think you pronounce his name, has talked about emergence, has talked about transition as an emergence. And that feels much more accurate, that you're just emerging as yourself and you're getting rid of all this stuff that isn't you, because a lot of transitioning is just getting rid of stuff. And that's when I thought I had to change myself. What I was talking about was I'm actually going to have to change my physical body, because that's what it came down to in the end, is who I am inside. I know it feels relatively genderless. I call myself a gender irrelevant transsexual because I just don't really feel like my gender is a thing. I'm just me. I'm just Oliver. But my outside, my body was just all wrong. And that's what had to change, which is obviously quite a dramatic change. Although it's not really. Once you get on the journey and you start doing it, it's really very simple. It just feels like it's going to be very dramatic.
Sure. And you also talk about looking in the mirror and seeing a man in drag.
Yeah.
And so if really all it is, quote, all it is sounds so...
No, but it is all it is. It is so
but
much
if all it is
simpler.
like stripping the
Fuck
drag
off.
away.
Exactly. There's that wonderful video of David Bowie in Boys Keep Swinging. I don't think that's the name of the song, but you know the one. And he's dressed in drag and he just rips off his wig and he smears the makeup off his face. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's why David Bowie is such the trans masculine icon, because he was doing all of that stuff. But that's what it felt like. I felt like before I transitioned, before I even knew I was trans, I couldn't leave the house without makeup on because I felt too vulnerable. And I realized afterwards it was because I thought that somebody would notice that I was a man if I wasn't wearing makeup, which is bizarre because I hadn't even recognized that I was a man. But I just felt like if I didn't do female well enough, somebody would notice that there was something awfully wrong.
Yeah. There are all of those things that we do subconsciously and not even realize or don't even understand why. And then when we learn more about ourselves,
it all starts to make sense.
We look back and we're like,
oh,
that's why we did that thing.
Yeah, like riding the motorcycle when I was in my 20s. Because I literally did not know trans was a thing at that stage. So I think the word sex change had been brought up once when I was a little kid. And my brother just made out like I was like 6 and he was 8, and he made out like it was the thing that happened in your sleep. And so I then got in a panic because I thought it was going to happen to me, because I thought I was like the perfect candidate to just wake up as a boy, given that I wanted to be a boy, but I didn't want to be a boy having been a girl before, because that was like really disgusting. At least in my little 6-year-old mind it was. And so when I was in my 20s and I started riding bikes, everybody was like, oh, she's going through her rebellious phase. And I wasn't. I was just trying to be me. And buying a motorbike and hanging out with the boys and wearing black leather and getting my hair cut, that was all part of me trying to manifest my identity in the closest way I could, given that I was too afraid to come out as queer and I didn't know that trans was a thing.
Something that you just said, or how you just said something, I think is so useful to talk about. Way that people talk about queerness, the way that there's no one way to be queer, there's no one way to be trans, there's no one way to experience all of the things that we as queer people go through. And I'm curious to ask about the way you've talked about your pronouns, because I think there are plenty of trans people who would say they never want to hear dead pronouns ever again. And it, as a consumer of your content, it almost seems like it's easier to talk about a previous part of your life that way. Can you address that at all?
Yeah, I can. I made the conscious decision when I started writing this memoir that I was going to use my dead name and my dead pronouns, because I really couldn't write the book without doing that, because the way the book is written is that the narrative is very in the moment. There's very little kind of retrospective perspective. So I try and keep the reader with Nikki, the person, in the place and in the mindset of who Nikki was then,
Mm-hmm.
and then carry the reader through this journey with me, because that's really how I wanted to show it. And that involved doing two things that were not hard, but two things that were a decision that I had to make. One, I had to use my previous name and pronouns. And two, I had to admit how little I knew when I started this journey. And I really, and how sheltered my upbringing had been, and how deep my internalized homophobia and transphobia was, and how binary my thinking, and how unbelievably ignorant I was. So it was excruciating to look back on that person that I was and go, okay, I've really got to bring this person to life on the page, but I couldn't tell the story without really going there. So I did all of those things, and I guess I just slightly got into a habit of it now. I think what I often do when I'm talking about my previous identity, my pre-transition identity, is I use the pronouns that the person who I'm thinking about seeing me at the time would have used. So I find myself still doing this if I'm talking about somebody who still misgenders me in the here and now. And if I'm relating something that they have done or said, I will use the pronouns that they would have used for me to highlight the incongruence between how they are seeing me and how I am and how I identify. So I really play with it all depending on what the circumstances are.
Yeah.
Which I know is not usual.
Again, it's not fair to say not usual, because it's usual for you, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and also I think that there's no point in, I'm never going stealth. I'm never going to deny my history, because this is what I've just written a memoir about. Sure. Anybody who knows me on any level is going to know that I used to identify as female, and I identified as female for such a long time that trying to erase that part of my history is just silly. It's not. It's the majority of my life. Yeah. And I think these different identities that I went through before I got to where I am now, they're all weirdly valid in their own way, because they are all part of what made me who I am.
Of course. And I think back to what I was saying earlier about the reader knows where the story is. The whole time for me, it was still Oliver's story.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Oliver is present throughout.
Yeah, you know you're going to slough everything off and get to Oliver in the end.
Right.
At least you hope you are.
Yeah. And so it almost feels like that's part of what the way in which you talk about your history, your past, that sort of does that too.
Yeah, very much.
Anyway, thank you for sharing that. I think people have a lot of questions when it's saying, oh, I would have never referred to you with those old pronouns.
Yeah, but also, I think that that's also an important question to answer, which is that I can do that, but you can't. Right. So it's that thing of I get to make those choices, because those microscopic decisions that have to be made in the moment can be made by me. But if anybody else refers to me as she, please don't do that.
No, because you are telling your story, and that is your journey and your choices to make. Yeah. For me, you have and always will be Oliver.
Thank you.
To the point where I literally had the song Oliver from the musical Oliver
Good,
stuck in my
that's
head all
great,
morning.
Awesome. You will start there. That's amazing.
Okay, earlier what do I want to talk about now? No, let's talk about coming out.
Okay.
Because that is a big part of your story too. Obviously, it's a big part of all of our stories, for better or for worse. I don't want to give anything away because we are spoiler-free here on Gays Reading. Okay. Even though
I do transition at the end.
Oliver transitions at the end of the book. But this piece in particular, you were outed to your ex-husband in a very
interesting,
hilarious way.
Can I spoiler this one? Yeah, I was.
No, don't spoil this one.
But then what can I say without spoiling it?
I want to talk about, how did it feel being outed? Was it a relief?
Yes, it was a relief for about 3 hours. Then it became even more horrifying than it had been before I was outed. Right. So the build up to that moment had been me trying. At that point when I was outed, I was married to a man and I had 4 very small children. And I was living this upper middle class life of a Connecticut suburban housewife, with my enormous house with a lawn that went down to the lake and the ladies who lunch and everything that goes with that. And I had been married for 10 years by that point, and I was utterly miserable. I was falling apart, literally falling apart. And I came out to my therapist, and then came a couple of months of trying to work out what to do next, because I really felt like I would be blowing up my entire life. My marriage, my children's lives, my parents, all these friends that I'd made since moving to America. I just thought I would blow the whole thing apart. And yet I had this one friend who lived in New York. And the first time I arrived in this country and I went down and I met her in a coffee shop in the East Village, just a friend from childhood who'd been living over here for a decade by that stage. And she was part of the East Village punk scene. And she was like really into the kind of counterculture queer community down there. And the first time we met, I was like, oh God, I think these are my people. And I'm like completely in the wrong life. And seeing it around me and seeing something that was suddenly accessible in a way that it really hadn't been in England, pull towards that was immediate and relentless. And so when I got out in the way that we can't talk about.
No, because everyone's going to go read
Everyone's
the book.
going to go read the book to find out how I got outed.
Yeah.
When I got outed, I was, because my husband's first reaction was, look, it's okay. It's fine. It's going to be fine. And I was like, oh my God, he must have realized, or he's unhappy in the marriage too. And now we can start divorce proceedings and I can leave Connecticut. I can go and live in Brooklyn and I can meet a woman and I can bring up my children in a queer community and everything's going to be great. And then, of course, he got home from work that night. And not to give you any more spoilers, everything changed. Things changed.
Yeah. It like makes me want to throw up.
It kind of made me want to throw up for quite a long time as well. Several years, yes.
I could imagine. When I was a teenager, or I think I was maybe 12 or something, and I had been out to myself, but I hadn't come out to anybody else yet. And on AOL Instant Messenger, somebody just asked me, are you gay? And it was someone who, it was an older gay man, or not old, that sounds terrible. No, he was like 3 or 4 years older than me. He was also a young person who was gay, who I looked up to. We were friends. And I think he nudged me out of the closet a little bit. And that, for me, was a bit of a relief. Just having someone ask the question versus needing to
come out.
Yeah, needing to say the words.
Yeah, I got outed several times. So then I had that experience with my best friend, Elizabeth, down in New York, who just came out and asked me. Was just like, are you gay? And I'm like, wait, what? Excuse me? And that was amazing because I felt very validated because she knew me very well. And so she could see it and that was lovely. And then I got outed much later by this dreadful woman whose children went to my children's school.
Fucking Pandora.
I know, great character. But again, by that stage, it was like, thank you, Pandora. I never thought I would thank you for anything, but thank you for this because it just
I assume it's a made-up name.
It is a made-up name. They are all made-up names.
Oh, of course, but I'm obsessed that you chose Pandora. Right, opening up Pandora's box.
I know, right? Just very clever.
Obviously.
Very clever.
Yeah.
Not very subtle.
Okay, so talking about coming out, that was a funny thing. I was shocked at how I literally burst into tears in the conversation that you had with your dad.
Yeah, you're not alone, so it's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I'm not alone. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, but did that conversation, would you say that really propelled you forward? Did that really help?
Oh, God, yes. It's my relationship with and this is talking about something more serious. This is something that I really do want people to hear and understand, which is that my relationship with my parents is completely different now than it was before I came out and before I transitioned, because I did not realize how much their not being able to see me affected me physically and mentally. And they couldn't see me because I wasn't showing myself to them. But it meant that whenever I was in their presence, I was like almost vibrating with anxiety. And that level of anxiety made me brittle and prickly and snappish. And it completely obliterated any possibility of there being any relationship between us. And it wasn't anything they were doing. It was just the physical reality of being in their presence and knowing that they had no idea who I was. And so after I transitioned, really, it took the transition to really get to that place where that just all fell away completely. And that is, we talk about dysphoria a lot, right? But I don't think people really understand the extent of what dysphoria is. It's not just like a feeling of discomfort because you're inhabiting the wrong sex, or you're born in the wrong body, or you're wearing the wrong clothes. It is this awful feeling of itchiness and discomfort and anxiety and brittleness that comes with not being seen by anybody, because people are so convinced by what they see and they don't read past it. They don't look past it. Why should they? We don't. So if what is a female, that's where you stop, and living with that. There are two aspects of it. One is just living with a body or a presentation that feels uncomfortable, but the other one is how you're being perceived by other people. And it just means you can't communicate with anybody, because it's like there's this sort of, it's like there's a sheet of glass in front of you, and somebody has painted a picture of a woman on the front of the glass, and they can only see you just vaguely, a vague shape behind that picture, and their eyes stop at that picture. And that's how it feels walking through the world. It's a Sylvia Plath bell jar. It separates you from people.
And the people on the outside don't necessarily know that the glass needs to get broken.
No. And
from
they're
the
not
inside.
doing anything wrong. They just, they can't get to you because you haven't broken the glass. And as you say, the only person who can break the glass is you.
Yeah. So much of the book is about being seen, feeling seen, expressing yourself, being loud.
Yes.
In every sense of the word.
Yes.
And listening to your body.
Yeah.
Which I think not enough of us do on a baseline.
Yeah. And I really wanted to talk about that because there's so much talk about how gender issues are ideological. And if you're this kind of trans, and I can't speak for every kind of trans, but if you're my kind of trans, it's really not ideological. It is just, it's purely physical. I have a male body, and it was born wrong, and I had to fix it in order to feel right. And it really is that simple. Right. And so it's when I talk about transitioning, the complicated part of transitioning is getting to the point where you're saying, okay, this is it, I'm trans, I need to transition. And that's why my transition doesn't happen till the end of the book, because by the time I'm there, it's like the rest of it's easy. We don't need to hear about testosterone injections and all the rest of it. It's just, it's not that interesting, because the struggle for me was getting to that point of saying, okay, I am legitimately trans, I need to transition. And that was all in my body. And I really wanted to talk about that aspect of it, because a lot of trans people can't talk about their bodies because it's not safe for them. And I feel like because of the kind of position of privilege that I'm in, I'm transmasculine, not transfeminine. I am 53. I live in a safe part of town. No one's coming after me yet. I can afford to have those kind of conversations to explain that for a huge amount of trans people, this is very rooted in the body.
Yeah. No, and I don't want to use the word simple, because there's nothing about anything in the book that's simple, but it is put plainly in the book. Right.
Yeah.
My body is wrong.
Yeah.
And
it is that simple. My body is body is wrong. I need to fix it. Right. It really is that simple. And even the fixing it part is that simple. It's a syringe in the thigh once a week and top surgery. It's not complicated. It's just, it's been made to appear so complicated that people think it's much more complicated than it is, because all the ideology surrounding it and the bad press and the pushback and the really doesn't have to be as complicated as people make it out to be. It's just that in order to create and stoke the amount of fear that people are stoking, it must be complicated. Otherwise, why would we be afraid of it?
Similarly, and this doesn't give anything away, but someone later in the book, towards the end of the book, basically asks, where does it all end?
Yeah.
Every day there's a new thing.
A new identity.
And it was so infuriating for me to read, because we are all changing every single day.
Right?
Every single day. And for better or for worse, it's terrible.
I mean, who stops?
To come to terms with.
Yeah, but who stops? Nobody stops. Yeah.
So if tomorrow you're plucking a hair out of somewhere that wasn't there the day before,
that's
it
changing.
could be that simple.
No, it's true. I think it was Kate Bornstein who said that age is the fourth gender. It is. We're all, particularly me, I'm 53, we're all growing old, and God knows where my body goes from here, but it probably ain't good. But yeah, I'm growing into a grumpy old man, and I love that. So that my identity going forward is going to be grumpy old man, and I'm quite looking forward to celebrating that as a identity that I can be proud of. Yeah.
Yeah. whether it is the hair on the chin or it could be as complicated as tomorrow you like crunchy peanut butter instead of
Mhm.
plain peanut butter,
Mhm.
right? And
Or tomorrow I start
we
wearing feather boas and drag. I think it's
right.
unlikely, but you never know.
Probably unlikely,
Yeah,
but
I've been there. Yeah, I've been through my drag phase. I don't
yeah,
need
you've
to go
done the
back there
drag.
again.
You were very good at
I know,
it. You
I
wrote a book
really
about
was,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that every day is different.
Yeah,
So it was very infuriating
yes,
that
yeah. Why can't you stop?
why can't the thing and none of us stop.
But also
You just don't
but it's
like
like, why
what I'm
can't you
doing.
stop? Because I like you now, and I
Mm,
don't want you to be something else other than what you are now. And you would never ask that of somebody cisgender. You would never say, I like this ink. I suppose there are women whose husbands do ask them of that ask that of them, and therefore we have Botox and plastic surgery and dieting ourselves down to size zeros and all the rest of it. But it's not a good thing to ask
yeah.
for somebody less than
Anytime my
development.
husband talks about getting a mullet or something, I say,
Please
don't.
don't.
I guess I do that too,
Yeah,
but like
but that's
there's,
not asking him to stop. That's just asking him not to make a bad fashion choice, which is slightly
yes.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
nice
I'm not saying don't
mullets.
be
No,
you. I am just
don't be you
saying,
with a mullet.
can you think about a little bit more deeply first? Write a memoir about it
Yes,
first, and
exactly. No mullets for
then you could
anybody
mullet.
over the age of 25, I think. It's like women shouldn't wear jeans over the age of 50. What was that old thing? That women shouldn't wear jeans over the age of 50? Was that a thing
Oh,
in
I
America?
don't know
Oh,
that.
yes, in England. Oh, yeah, no, you were mutton dressed as lamb if you wore jeans over the age of 50. Come on,
Oh,
this is the
geez.
background I came from. Seriously, no wonder I didn't know I was trans.
Okay, speaking of, you talk about wanting to be the main character of a Dickens novel.
Hmm.
Um, Tell me one with a happy ending.
Okay, maybe I don't want to be the main character of a Dickens novel. I just like the fashion. I wanted the little jaunty top hat and the tail coat and the cravat.
What is stopping you?
Yeah, I know.
I'm disappointed you're not wearing
But
that
I
on this
did go through
recording.
that phase as well, but that was before
Oh,
I
okay.
transitioned, and now I'm in. I just, you know what? I did do it all. I have my uncle's top
Mm.
cap. I've got a little tail coat. I never
And
wore.
that doesn't really correspond with grumpy old
No,
man.
it doesn't. I've gone through that phase now. If I wore that out on the street, I never wore it out on the street. I wore it at home. I just dress up at home because I'm weird.
Mm.
Yeah, no, that's again, been there, done that, moving on to the next thing now.
Okay, because you said that, and I was like, Oliver,
Yeah,
what the hell?
yeah,
They're all tragic.
yeah,
Why would you want to do that to yourself?
yeah, because I thought my life was tragic.
Mm,
My life was tragic. It was full of yearning and unresolved shame. And my life, I was a victim of circumstances. The world was against me. I had a very tragic life
yeah.
until I woke up and said, yeah, I don't actually want to do this anymore.
Right. Now we're on the
Now
other
I just
side.
want to go off and be happy and successful. Very much a
Right.
mindset.
Tiny Tim has rid of his
He
crutch.
has. He's got his Christmas pudding and his turkey.
A
Yeah,
strong,
strapping lad.
strapping
Or
lad.
possibly a strong, strapping trans woman. Even
Maybe.
better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's you. Maybe you are now, you're 5'3".
Yeah.
Maybe you're grown up
I'm
Tiny
grown
Tim.
up Tiny Tim. I threw away my crutch. It was a miracle.
A Christmas
A Christmas
miracle.
miracle.
God bless us, everyone. Oh my
Exactly.
God. You're like, why did I go on Gaze
Yeah,
Reading?
I know, really. Seriously. But it's great. These are questions that nobody has asked me before.
Are narwhals real?
Our novels are depressing. Can your life be before you realize you don't want to be that character anymore?
Right. These are the hard hitting
Yeah, they really
questions.
are.
Maybe most importantly, because I love a good date.
Hmm.
So this is not in the book
Hmm.
because you are now flourished into your full being.
Hmm.
How has it been like going on dates and things as your most true self?
I'm very sorry to disappoint you, but I actually haven't been.
Not a single one.
Not a single one.
Oliver?
So I know, but look, hear me
Let's
out.
get you on
Okay, no,
Tinder?
no, 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 no. Hear me out, right? I have justifications for this.
I want to be a matchmaker.
Okay,
Tell me.
no,
Tell me your
you
reasons.
cannot be
Tell
a
me.
matchmaker. So here are my reasons,
Fine.
right? Okay, here are my reasons.
Okay.
I'm not saying never. I'm just saying I have found in the past, and I'm not doing that kind of, oh, I got hurt and I'm never dating again. But I have found in the past that being trans and dating, there is a risk that whoever you date, they're going to want you to be a little more of something or a little less of something, even with the best intentions, right? I spent so long trying to get to here that I just can't compromise that at the moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I start dating somebody, I just need some time to really enjoy being myself, right?
Amen.
And then at some stage, and also I am still a solo parent of 3 kids. One's left for college, but I still got 3 at home. So I don't exactly have a lot of time on my hands. Just it works beautifully with I just love being able to go anywhere and do anything and spend the free time that I have with this widening circle of queer friends I've got. And also, I don't even know who I would date.
Okay.
So I just...
Do you have a copy of your book in front of you?
Yeah, I do. It's just here.
Turn to page 116.
Oh God!
And read and read the first 2 sentences, and this will. I want my listeners to understand.
Oh no! I can't believe you did this to me.
Why I harassed you about this?
I can't believe you did this to me. No, I'm not reading it. If you want to read what it says on page 116, you're going to have to buy the book. I am not reading it. Okay, so I'm leaning into this. All right, this conversation is not ending there.
Listen, I trust. No. I believe. I want your best life, but
you do not believe me when you say I'm happy not dating. Sometimes I don't believe me either, but it's just because I'm fine, and I'm quite lazy, and I can't be asked, and I don't want to internet date. Look, if somebody just turned up on my doorstep and they were like amazing, then maybe.
Listen, maybe in the back of your book, you know what? I'm gonna print out stickers.
Okay.
And anytime I see the book in a bookstore, I'm gonna stick it in the back of the book so that they'll fall in love with you.
What is your sticker gonna say though?
It'll just say
Oliver is available to date.
Email hello@gaysreading.com and I'll vet everyone.
Okay.
And anyone good.
Okay, if you will do that, then I will consider the ones that you vetted. Let's put it that way. All right. This sounds amazing. This is you are like my personal dating app, and I don't even have to post pictures of myself or advertise myself.
You did write a book about
How could I go on a dating app? How am I going to advertise myself? I'm a 5'3" sort of man. Niche market, isn't it?
People love grumpy old men.
Well, I bloody hope so, because that's what I am now. So yeah. Okay.
We got this.
All right.
When you're ready.
Thank you. I appreciate.
We'll make it happen.
I really appreciate.
Someone's going to be in the audience of your production of My Fair Lady.
See me in my wingtip brogues.
And they're going to be like, who is that? I love him. And then I'll be in the lobby selling your book. And I'll say, read this.
Okay, so if I meet somebody at like a book signing, do I have to send them to you first?
No. I'm just, if you want to.
I think I might. Can you meet my dating? It could be my dating agent. I'll put it on my contacts page. Literary agent, speaking agent, dating agent. That's amazing.
Nothing would make me happier.
Okay, done. We're on. 25% of nothing.
I'm so excited with all these teasers that we're giving people. You have to read the book to find out how Oliver was outed. You have to read the book. 116, why Jason trolled Oliver. I'm so excited for you and Frighten the Horses, Oliver Radclyffe. Everyone go buy your copy and learn all the things that we wouldn't tell you about today. Are there things that we can look forward to from you from the future? Are you just raising your kids and living your life? Are there other things coming out?
No, there's another book in the works. I'm busy writing the next book, which is a novel. I have nothing but 3 characters and a premise at the moment. I don't know where it's going, but it's going to be fun stuff.
It's an adaptation of Pandora's Box.
It's an adaptation of Pygmalion, where Henry Higgins is trans.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. But it could be. It might be now. I might have to write that.
That would have been
so wild.
Amazing.
Wouldn't that have been fantastic?
Wait, but you should write that. What the hell?
I totally should. Maybe I will.
Can you see all these?
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that makes my heart so happy.
I know, that's why I showed you. People love it.
Oh, God. That makes my heart
just stuck
so
them in
happy.
random places.
Did you? But thank you for doing that. Because that was just a really if that's what you did, that was a really kind thing to do.
No, that's not what I did. No, look. Things are even underlined.
Oh, my God, even better.
I know. Some of them have questions in the margins.
Wow. We need a whole other podcast to answer all your questions.
I think we got there.
I think we got there.
I'm so excited to read your adaptation of Pygmalion.
Great.
That doesn't exist yet, except for in our imaginations. Yes,
and will then become a stage play, and then a major movie deal, and then we can retire on the proceeds.
We're manifesting.
Yeah, we're manifesting. Amazing. And my future girl.
Yes. I can't wait to meet her. We'll all have dinner one night.
Okay, awesome. Sounds fantastic.
Oliver, it's such a pleasure to meet you.
And you, Jason.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being my guest gay reader on Gays Reading. Welcome.
Thank you.
Our listeners might know this guest from everything from being an online crusader, a brilliant author, my favorite Goodreads reviewer, the one and only, the epitome of guest gay readers, Roxane Gay. Before we get into books, there's something I have to talk to you about.
Yes, go on.
Because there's something that we have in common. We are both very upset about how difficult it is to peel garlic.
So impossible and so frustrating. And I've tried various gadgets. There's this one thing that's like a plastic sleeve with teeth on the inside, and you put the excuse me, you put the garlic cloves inside it and you like rub it up and down. And theoretically, the skin is supposed to come off, but it doesn't always work, and it doesn't always remove all of the skin. Peeling garlic is the bane of my existence, and I've taken to buying pre-peeled garlic sometimes. However, most of the time it's already starting to soften and
Yes.
it's not as good. So
And
then
it's a
you have
little
to go back
acidic.
to the source.
Yes.
And also, it's like the shittiest garlic cloves you've ever seen in your life.
I
They're
know.
this was a problem I ran into yesterday.
No.
And they're like little, like runt garlic cloves. And I always think, how dare you sell this? How dare you?
I know. And for some reason, they're all, I don't know if they're starting to turn or if whatever they're sitting in, it's a little acidic, it's a little
Mhm.
vinegary. Like it doesn't even taste good, but I
No.
didn't have to open them. So is it better?
Yes. And I refuse to use pre-minced garlic in the glass jar. That's just a crime, a war crime, if you will.
It is a war crime.
No, thank you.
In researching you, I was like, oh, Roxane and I have a lot in common, but our hatred of peeling garlic is maybe the biggest piece in the middle of our Venn diagram.
Yes, it is just a travesty. And I love garlic, but I really wish garlic would get it together.
Who can we write to? Someone like
Someone in
how
Gilroy.
has like Martha Stewart not figured it out?
I know. I want to go. So there's a lot. Most garlic is grown in Gilroy, California. They have a garlic festival, and it's just a raison d'etre in Gilroy. And I wonder if they have any special tricks or tips, because we're out
Truly,
here.
I'm writing this down. I'm going to look it up. A garlic festival?
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine if part of what is at this garlic festival is like secret meetings about how to open garlic, but no one else is allowed to know unless you go to the festival?
That would be amazing. That would be
God.
amazing.
Then we'll be there next year.
How could we not?
How could we not? Okay, so that's important.
Yeah,
I
very.
needed to get that off my chest. Thing number 2, and this came up for you in some conversation, I think, during COVID. So this might not be the case for you anymore, but you are a cable person.
Yes, I am.
So cable overwhelms me.
Why? There's so many options.
That's why.
But streaming is overwhelming too, because you have to decide. I make too many decisions in my day-to-day life. I'm too busy already. I don't have time to be like, what are we going to watch? I don't want to. When you go watch cable, you have a lot of options, but also you don't. What's there is what's being served to you. That's what you're watching from 9 to 9:30. So get on
'Cause
board
that's
or
what's
turn the
on.
TV off.
Then you have to wonder what's going to be on next if you don't look
Yes,
at
and I
the
love
thing.
that excitement, especially on a movie channel. Oh, what's next? What is next?
Do you ever try to guess it based on the like first 4 seconds of the opening?
It took me a second. I was like, the words had to get in there.
Right. You're like, oh,
Always.
is this Warner Brothers? Do I
Like, that's
recognize
so
the
exciting
music?
to me, like
Uh-huh.
because I like challenge myself and think
Uh-huh.
of myself as a bit of an impresario when it comes to first strains of a song or
It's named
the
that tune.
first strains of a movie, and
Yeah.
so I'm very into it.
What's your genre of choice?
I love dramas, romantic comedies. I'm not particularly into war movies because,
Sure.
quite frankly, there's enough war in the real world for us to focus on.
What?
And I don't do a ton of horror. Horror is
Fair.
just not my genre.
Romantic comedy was not, I was not expecting that to be number 2.
God, I
on your
love rom-coms. They're so good.
What's a fave?
Oh, what is a favorite? That's a good question.
Let's see how our Venn diagram is doing.
I love, oh my God, why am I blanking on the name? Cameron Diaz and that horrible little man. It's not horrible. I don't know him personally, but
I think of
Ashton Kutcher. Leave it. The one where they get married in Vegas and
Yes.
Vegas is in the title.
Just Married?
What was that?
Just Married?
No, different. Terrible.
Oh no, that's Ashton Kutcher and what's her face?
I think Katie. No, not Katie.
No, Murphy. Who died? Brittany Murphy.
R.I.P. Such a great actress.
Okay, wait.
So
This is gonna bother me.
it's When in Vegas, maybe?
Oh.
What is it?
Look, how classic are you?
I'm pretty classic. And it's
Uh,
so good. It's just so good. And I'm a fan. And it's just, I have to Google this. It's
I know.
it's
Wait,
going to drive me crazy. And they end up together. What happens in Vegas?
what happens in Vegas? Oh my God, it has a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm obsessed.
Some people have no taste.
I also love the movie Must Love Dogs, which I think also has like a 25%
Must
on
Love
Rotten
Dogs
Tomatoes.
is really shitty. However,
How dare
I
you?
will watch it. Oh, like if it's on, serve that up. Hold on.
Also, because you don't have to change the channel
Yes.
because it's coming on.
And sometimes I just don't want to change the channel. Sometimes I
Right.
just want to surrender to whatever is going on. This is what's on. This is what I have to watch. And it's fine.
My favorite thing I think about that growing up is they would be back to back.
Mhm.
The thing about cable and movies is if you catch something from the middle and it's on like a marathon, then you get to watch the first half.
And then you go
after-
to the Western channel if you're on the East Coast and you watch the second half. Or you just watch it all over again.
You watch it all over
I
again.
love
right.
when it's like a 3-hour movie.
Mm.
And so I watch it on the East. Like my cable here in LA has both the HBO East and HBO West. So I will watch it on HBO East. And then I'm like, aha, look at that.
That's
And
so
watch
funny.
it again on HBO West just to let it really sink in.
There are some movies that I have really only seen the second half of dozens. I've seen the second half of dozens of times and the first half of just a few
Mhm.
times. A League of Their Own is one of them. I think it was
Mm.
on TV all the time when I was growing up, but I only caught it. It was one of those things that was on, I would have to watch it. The reason why I'm even bringing this up is because I'm not a cable person and I was like, am I missing anything?
Yes.
Does Roxane have any recommendations? What should I watch? But
You're missing everything. Get on board. Just get it together. And what's so funny is my wife and I are bi-coastal and our cable bills are just astonishing. And it's cable/internet. And it was inching up to here in LA $400 a month, $405. And in New York it was like $375. And so I called Spectrum and I was like, this is absolutely unsustainable. And this is why people are cutting the cord. And they lowered my bill by $150. So it's back to what I think is reasonable.
that's so
But
funny.
Debbie is the frugal one. I'm the spender. She's the saver.
Mhm.
And so she cut our cable and then we got like YouTube TV and I hate it. I'm so upset every time I go to watch TV. I'm just like, this budget ass cable. It's great. There's no like live channels and there's less commercials, which is great.
Mm.
And we share
Bright
an
side.
account with my parents, which is also great. And they live in Florida. So we have to go to their house at least once every 3 or 4 months to reset.
Reset it.
And
But that probably messes up the algorithm.
oh no, I set them up on their own situation.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
you
Whew.
can have 4 or 5 family members. They have their own thing. In fact, the other day they had to get their own Netflix account and they were very proud of themselves because Netflix caught on the fact that we were all sharing. I don't know why, but yes, we're all on the same everything except for cell phones. And Netflix made them get their own account and they were very pleased that they managed to do it all by themselves
Oh,
without
good
asking for
for
help.
them.
I know.
I'm
I
proud
was
of
like
them.
really impressed. I was like, yes, guys, get it. Look at you with your own little what's next? Hulu?
Oh my God, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I could talk to you about garlic and TV all day.
Yes.
This is Gay's Reading, and I have to know,
Mhm.
what is Roxane Gay reading?
I actually, so I get a lot of galleys. So
Mhm.
I tend to read well in advance. So I just finished Katie Kitamura's audition, which is out in April.
Yeah, I'm saying
And
mid-20s.
yes, I don't understand it. I don't know what happened, but it was wonderful. She's a
Did
brilliant
not.
writer.
That was a twist.
She's brilliant. And it was just sublime prose from the first to the last word. I was all in, absolutely all in. And I still am like, I know you're not supposed to do this. And I actually don't know the author, but I really just want to send her an email and just be like, secretly, between you and me, I won't tell anyone, just for funsies, what the hell happened here. Just tell me what your intentions were, what was going on. Because it's meant to be confusing and it will make
Sure.
sense once you read it.
Sure.
But I'm dying to have a coffee with her. And
I think
have her
if
explain it.
Roxane Gay reached out to an author, they would want to have that coffee.
I know, but she's like famous, so I'm afraid to email her. And also, I'm like, I don't want to seem that dumb because I'm smart. I have a PhD. I know how to read. But oh my God, what happened?
Every once in a while, when I'm in conversation with an author, I'm like, I need to make sure I understood this. Otherwise, because I'm a good reader.
Mhm.
I have a degree in theater. I
Mhm.
took a lot of script analysis classes, but I hope what I'm saying is right.
Yeah.
I feel that.
And so for now, I'm just letting it percolate. It was worth it.
Great.
Very good book. Highly recommend when it comes out next year.
Love.
So,
So, on this episode of Gaze Reading,
yes.
we're featuring Oliver Radclyffe.
Yes.
Tell me, how did this come to be?
So I have my own imprint called Roxane Gay Books, very cleverly named, very original. And I had a micro press many years ago when I was a broke graduate student and junior professor making, oh God, it's embarrassing how little I made, but it's okay.
I feel you.
And
Nonprofit theater. I
yeah,
understand.
oh, know
Right.
that life because I don't have children. And
Mhm.
I just thought, what can I do with the spare money I don't have? But publish little tiny books was the answer, of course. And so I started publishing these really lovely books, and they were about 4.25 by 5.5. So you could put it in your purse, your pocket, and go about your business. And it was challenging in that you have to commission the cover design. I did all of the interior design work myself, and I did all the promotion myself, which is to say,
Mm.
not much promotion because I had no network of any kind. And it was fine. It was cute, but I always wondered what could I do with actual resources? And several years ago, I started wondering, could I have an imprint? And I asked my agent about it about 5 years ago, and she was like, yeah, of course. I got interest from both of my publishers. My fiction is published at Grove Atlantic, my nonfiction at HarperCollins. And both of them were interested, but I decided to go with Grove, even though I have a great relationship with both presses, but Grove is smaller. It's a
Mhm.
mid-sized publisher, and I knew that the books were really going to get a lot of personal attention.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to pay writers as much, but they would get an advance, they would get publicity support, and we would see what could happen. And so far, I have published 4 books, and
Congrats.
thank you. It's exciting. I love it. It's humbling because selling books is really hard, especially for debut authors. And so Oliver sent in a memoir, Frighten the Horses, and it's about his transition journey. And he was born a poor Black child. And that's a joke for people who are my age.
Of course. And
From-
anyone who
yeah.
has just listened to the first half of this episode knows that he, in fact, was
Yes.
not.
No, he was born as an upper class, wealthy, very attractive British woman. And toward the middle of his life, started realizing something is off here. And he thought at first he might be a lesbian. And so he came out. And then he realized this isn't quite right and came out again, not only to himself, but to his husband, from whom he is now divorced, and of course, his 4 children. And so it's a really interesting memoir because he grew up very sheltered and even was sheltered as an adult. And so you'll notice in the memoir that he really didn't know what he didn't know about being trans, about transitioning, about being queer in this world. And he did it from a very privileged position, which is also interesting and different. And he acknowledges that privilege, which is
Yeah.
incredibly important because
Yeah.
for so many trans people, not only do they not have the social currency to transition, it's incredibly difficult to get the money to get the transition medical care that they need. So it's an interesting story, and it really is also very witty. He has a British sense of humor because he is, in fact, British. And I really just enjoyed the writing, not only conceptually as a whole, but on a sentence level.
Yeah. And this is your first memoir for the imprint. Nonfiction? First memoir?
Let me think. What did I publish? It is. Yes. First, I love fiction. Fiction, I don't read a lot of nonfiction. My first love is very much fiction. And so
Yeah.
the
I think
3
that's why
books
this sort of
were,
surprised me.
yeah, the first 3 books were a novel, 3 novels actually.
Mhm.
And I do have 2 essay collections forthcoming, and of course a short story collection and a couple novels. So I am interested in all kinds of books, but Oliver's was just a beautiful memoir, and I really hope that it finds its audience. I think it already has started to find an audience, which is wonderful, and I'm very grateful for that. But I hope as many people as possible read this book.
When I'm on Goodreads and I see that you have written a review for a book, it means something.
It does. I read it. No, but I hear you. I do
there's
get that
there's
a
an
lot.
element of like trusting opinions or understanding taste, whether you like a book or not. It's like, oh, I know that we both loved Martyr, so
Yes.
if
Oh, what a great
Roxane
book.
also loved this book, then I probably should pick it up too.
Yes. And I am really I'm really happy that people trust my opinion. And I always hope that they create space for their own opinions as well, especially if I don't like a book. Because sometimes I don't. And I'm honest on Goodreads.
Yes.
Because if you're not honest, if you love everything, then you don't have taste. You don't have discernment. Not everything is good. And also, it's very subjective. A book I love, another reader might think is middling or not
loving
good.
and it being good are very different things.
That too.
Must
I
Love
love a
Dogs
lot
is
of
a
bad books.
terrible movie. I love it.
I know. Like, it's okay to love bad things.
Right.
Not criminal bad, but quality bad.
And what's so great about your reviews for folks who have not seen them is they are succinct.
Yes. In and out.
So thank you for that. I say on behalf of every Goodreads reader. Okay, so you just read Audition. Anything else on your radar that that our listeners?
Yeah, I have a lot of really great forthcoming books, but I really recommend We're Alone by Edwidge Danticat, which came out 2 weeks ago. It's an essay collection, and it's a really slender volume if you're looking for it's not a quick read, but it is a slender volume with a really powerful punch. And the book I'm actually reading right now is Guide Me Home by Attica Locke. And Attica Locke writes Southern Gothic crime fiction, and it's just extraordinarily good. I'm in it deep right now with this guy who recently resigned from the Texas Rangers and has a bit of a drinking problem, but is also trying to find a missing Black woman. And right now, the mystery is very confounding. Where is she? Why is nobody looking for her? What happened? Because she was the only Black woman in an all-white sorority. I think those girls had something to do with it. And put that out there. And I have to report back.
Heard it here first. Oh, so funny. And that sounds so good.
It's just so good. And Attica writes very atmospherically. And so it's very immersive. The prose is very sharp. And she's just a wonderful writer. And she also writes for film and television. And she's great.
Amazing. This episode is coming out in November. Can you share what your book club is going to be for our listeners?
Oh, yeah. It's not a secret. The Women's Hotel by Danny Lavery.
What? I'm so excited.
Yeah. Danny's a cutie pie. So I actually like his writing very much. Some of it is a bit 18th century for me on his newsletter, which is very fun. And so I'm like, I'm not well versed in 18th century literature or 19th century literature to really get these jokes, but I can tell that they're funny. But his contemporary work is really wonderful. And The Women's Hotel, it actually reminds me of Rona Jaffe and her novel, what was it, The Best of Us? No, I'm blanking on the title, but it has a Rona Jaffe, but dingier type vibe in that the hotel that these women are all living at has seen better days.
For sure. And I think I have 3 copies of Women's Hotel sitting at my desk right now. So I am going to host a giveaway.
Nice.
So that anyone who's listening, you can join the Roxane Gay Book Club. So I'll post about it on Instagram. So go follow at Gays Reading on Instagram, everyone, and win your copy of Women's Hotel.
I'm so excited.
Okay, I've also been asking everyone what a hot take is, a quick read, what they're complaining about. Everyone has been talking about the freaking election.
So I wonder why.
I've been asking that question a little bit less, but if there's anything other than garlic that you are reading right now, feel free. This is your time to air your grievance.
Oh, okay. It's like Festivus. In November.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh my God, that face that you just made.
Well,
you are ready.
I was thinking of politics, but it's not directly related. It's tangential, but Olivia Nuzzi, the journalist who who had an affair, supposedly not physical, with RFK Jr.
It was just virtual? Is that
what? It was virtual. She sent him nudes and whatever. And so now she's suspended, but not fired from New York Magazine, which is interesting, a choice. And so there are a lot of questions arising around journalistic ethics, because apparently for journalists, you're not supposed to sleep with your subjects or sources. Huh. And
Oh.
yes, and what's interesting is that journalists love to talk about integrity, and so many of them are like, I don't vote because I want to be impartial, which is completely insane, by the way. This whole journalists don't vote as if laws don't affect them. Literally, you're predicated on the First Amendment, freedom of speech.
Right.
How could you not vote to make sure that stays together? But okay, so side read there. But the main read is, it's amazing to see all these journalists who cloak themselves in the idea of honesty and integrity, caping for this woman who had such journalistic malpractice and continued to cover the presidential campaign. Wild times. Now, I'm not here to judge her personal choices
No,
at
send those
all.
nudes.
And go for it. If you have a nude-worthy body, and who everyone does,
Everybody has a newsworthy
everyone does,
body. Yes.
by all means. And if you want to send that to a married man, okay, feel free, your choice. But like, when you then also don't disclose it and you continue to report on the person, how are we supposed to trust your judgment? So it's just interesting to see white journalists jumping up and down to defend her, which leads me to believe or to not even believe, leads to wonder, who are they having affairs with? Delicious. Yes, that's occupied not much of my mind. I would say I've given it about 1.3% of my mental energy.
It took you a minute to think about it. So
yeah,
it's
it
fine.
did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah. That's a good read.
Thank you.
On Goodreads.
Yes. Goodreads.com. Find more there.
Roxane Gay, such a delight.
Likewise.
When I told people that I was having guest gay readers on every episode, every single person was like, you have to get Roxane Gay. I was like, duh. Reached out already.
Yeah, I'm glad that we could make this work, because this was very fun. I love talking about books.
Me too. So whenever you want to chat books, I'm always here for you. And I'm like, Gay's reading, it's like,
it's right there. So
I know, I'm a little sad your imprint is not Gay Books.
Just cover my name. There
I'll just
you go.
black on every version
there.
of this.
Put a little piece of tape on it. Gay Books.
Gay Books. Missed opportunity.
I know, now that I think about it. The reason I didn't do Gay Books, and I did consider it, is because many years ago I had, not many, but like 6 or 7 years ago, I had a little magazine that I hosted on Medium called Gay Magazine.
Yes, yes.
And so many people thought it was gay as in homosexual.
Yeah.
And I get why they would make that connection, for sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense. However, it was more, the lens of the magazine was broader than that. And so people really misunderstood. And I think it affected overall readership because of that, which is actually a sad reflection of where people are at. Like, why would that be a deterrent? Why would that not be something you would want to read?
I feel that way with Gay's reading. I think a lot of people think it is either only gay books or only gay authors or only queer content. And that isn't really true. I'm trying to feature more queer people just because queer people don't get enough airtime. But anyone can listen. All sorts of authors are on the show. And I'm the gay reader and I have guest gay readers. So we're doing the gayness for everybody.
And I think that's great. And also, what does it say about you that you don't want to engage with learning, if it were strictly about gay books? Right. Go ahead and listen anyway. Take a gander. Because you would hopefully want to learn about all kinds of books.
Straight people, you are infiltrating the gay bars. You can also come into the gay books.
To listen. I recently went back to my hometown, Omaha, Nebraska, to do some campaign work. And it was fine. But I asked about one of the big gay bars in downtown Omaha. I had dinner with a group of Nebraska gays. And it was so funny because everyone's face changed the minute I asked about this one bar. And I was like, oh, what happened? And they were like, the straights have taken over. And I was just like, oh my God, a tale as old as time.
Seriously. You went to Lincoln?
I went to Omaha. But no, this trip I didn't go to Lincoln, but
I'm sorry, you went
to Lincoln.
I once upon a time was working for a university and I represented them at the Thespian Festival at the university in Lincoln.
Yeah, that's where I got my master's.
There was a steakhouse across the street called, I think, Misty's or something.
Yes, Misty's is the nicest restaurant in town, or was like 20 years ago.
All I remember is they had really good bisque and it was super good.
Misty's is a really great restaurant and it's been around for a really long time. And it was always like, when I was going to grad school when I lived there, and I was also young and very broke. And so it was like the super fancy restaurant. It was just very aspirational for me.
Oh my God. Obsessed. Roxane Gay, I could, again, talk to you all day. Thank you so much for being here. Anyone, if you have a trick for peeling garlic,
Yes.
email hello@gaysreading.com. We want, seriously, I'm going to put together a little doc. I'm going to share it wide. We need everyone's tips and tricks because Roxane and I are losing sleep over it. And please,
Truly.
we need you.
If there's a chef listening, hook us up.
Yes. My former roommate is a chef. I'm going to text him.
Oh, see? You just, right there, problem solving.
Right there. I'm talking to a chef in a couple of weeks. We're gonna get a good collection of answers. We're gonna try them.
Good.
Thank you, Oliver Radclyffe. Thank you, Roxane Gay. Everyone make sure to check out Oliver's book, Frighten the Horses, wherever you get your books. It is out now. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram @gaysreading. We are giving away books every week, all the time, so make sure to check that out. And I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye.